Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live, the Daily Creative Challenge, the Photography Daily Creative Challenge, that is. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you live for the, third, fourth day. Today's Thursday, so fourth day of the Photography Daily Creative Challenge. And this is although it's the fourth day, it's the third challenge. So welcome if you're new, and welcome if you've been here before. There are lots of people in the chat already. I see Robin, Andreas, Sean, Sam, Prajant, if I'm saying that correctly. Hopefully I am. Eric, Sam, I said Sam already, Ralph, and of course Adobe Live in San Francisco. Lindsay, welcome everybody. So today we're going to be taking a look at another way of adjusting your images, your photography, to make it look better. And of course, today is going to be, we released a challenge this morning. It's about geometry adjustments. And I'll explain what that is as we get to the actual demonstration and challenge itself. And again, if you're watching this on the replay, you can still join in. You don't have to wait till it's live to do this. If the live time doesn't suit your schedule, you can always watch it later, as you may be doing now. And then go to the page, download the sample image, or at least see what the challenge is, and either use it on the sample images that I provide, or you can use it on your own images as well. So it's great to see so many of you here today. And again, I can't wait to show you what we're going to be doing. So once again, if you are new and you're going to be working on the challenges, let me explain how this all works. I'm going to switch over to my desktop. I've got the Adobe Live page up, so I'm seeing myself live, kind of delayed, but here we go. What you want to do is when you go to behance.net/live/Adobe Live, you want to come down to the page or to the link that says behance.net challenge Photoshop, or you can just go straight there. Once you're there, you can sign up for the challenge. It's basically four steps. Each day, you'll receive the challenge around 7 a.m. Pacific time. You can join the community chat, so you can join the Behance chat while the live stream's going. But while the live stream's not going, you can also join us on Discord. So for people that are like, what's Discord? Here's the link for Discord, and you can pop in there, download the app, install it on your platform of choice, and join the discussions 24/7. So you don't have to wait for it to be live in order to do that. Now, once you've joined the community chat, wait for our daily live stream if you want to ask questions or see how to get started. If not, you figured it out on your own. You can use the sample images, or you can use your images. And then finally, and this is what we're going to be taking a look at today as well, share your work. Show us what you've done. So each day the challenge will be unlocked. So the first day which was Tuesday. Photo editing, just we did more of an import thing, how to use Lightroom. And you can watch the video on that, get started with the images. Then yesterday we did the crop tool, and I know that sounds simple, but there was a lot to the crop tool that a lot of people didn't know, so we shared that. And you can get those images and watch that video. And today is going to be about geometry adjustments, and then you'll see the days unlock each day as they unlock. So the thing that's different about this challenge for the next week or so is that in the past we've done just Photoshop, and now we're doing Photoshop and Lightroom. So I've been trying to work in both where it makes sense. Today we're going to spend more time in Lightroom, but I'll let you know when there's something that is better to do in Photoshop or better to do in Lightroom, or something that can be done in both. And that's what we're going to be doing today. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to the challenge itself. And then when I'm done, we're going to look at some of the entries that you guys have done from yesterday. So I'm going to pop over to Lightroom. Now, when I say that, there's Lightroom, and then there's Lightroom Classic. So Lightroom Classic is where I usually do my work, but what I'm going to show you works in either version of Lightroom. And like I said, I'll tell you if it works in both. So Lightroom, and it also works in Camera Raw in Photoshop. So it doesn't matter which version of Lightroom you're using, and it also doesn't matter if you want to do this in Camera Raw as well if you don't use Lightroom. All right, so anyway, I'm going to pop over to Lightroom Classic, and I have the image that I gave you guys to download, so here it is. Now, I can look at it full screen by hitting the letter F, by the way, in Lightroom Classic. That's a keyboard shortcut. You'll notice that this, by the way, the scene is from Amsterdam. And you'll notice that the buildings kind of just look like they're falling into each other. And you typically get this anytime you take a photograph of tall buildings or multi-story buildings from the ground. It's just something the camera does. It's a lens thing that happens to your images. And a lot of people just leave it like that because that's what they got out of the camera and they think, oh, I don't need to do anything because that's the way it came. We can fix this. You don't have to live with crooked buildings. You don't have to live with buildings leaning in on themselves. So that's what geometry adjustments are all about. Now, I'm going to go back and show you now how to fix this. And by the way, here's an image that we'll be working on again as well at some point during the challenge. And if you look at this one, I shot this one in Detroit. And same thing. This building looks like it's leaning in on the right. This building looks like it's leaning in on the left. And that was just the way the camera took the picture. It's just the way it is. But again, with geometry adjustments, you do not have to live with those. All right. And you've probably seen it on your own images, whether you paid attention to it or not. But now we get the chance to actually fix it. So let's go in and take a look at how to fix it. If I were going to do this in Classic, I would head over to the Develop module. If I were going to do this in Lightroom Cloud, I would head over to the Edits. And in the editing, I would have the ability to go in and go down to, in editing, it's actually called, or in Lightroom, it's actually called Geometry. In Lightroom Classic, it's actually called Transform, just to make it interesting. But both sets of things do the same thing. And I would be hard pressed to know what it is in Photoshop. Let's go take a look. In Camera Raw, that is. So I'm going to edit this image in Photoshop just because I'm curious to see if it's called Geometry. I believe it's probably called Transform, but we'll see. And again, if I use the Camera Raw filter, and yep, got it, new version, get started, great. In Camera Raw, it's called, nope, that's not it. It is called, I always forget where these are. So I don't use it in Camera Raw that often. Oh, no, sorry, it's over here. It's over here, and it's a button called Transform. So it's the Transform. It's Transform in Classic, and it's Transform in Camera Raw as well. It's the new version that calls it Geometry. But anyway, it's the same thing. You see the same sliders. You see the same effects, no matter whether you're in Photoshop or Lightroom. So now I'm going to pop back over to Lightroom, which is where I would normally do this type of work. And again, before I even worry about fixing the buildings, I like to fix some of the other things first. For example, before I even do the transform, I would go to Lens Corrections and enable that profile correction just to kind of see what happened when I did that. The bowing in the lens or the image straightened it and flattened it out. So that was before. Now the building looks kind of more curved. That's after. Now the building looks more flat, the way it should be. All right, so now we can go to Transform. And in Transform, you have this wonderful thing called Upright. And Upright has gotten better over the years as well. Originally, Upright was off, auto, level, vertical, and full. Then last, I don't know, year or so, they added the guided option. And I'm going to explain, and we're going to take a look at what each one does and see which one we like best. Now, auto is just a given. Like, that's the one you should always try first, because that's the one where Lightroom or Camera Raw tries to fix it first. Like, so why wouldn't I try that first? And that does an okay job. That straightened it out more, but still, like, this is better, but still this one looks like it's still leaning in a little bit more to the right than it should. So unfortunately, there's no auto twice. There's no auto again. There's no auto ×2. There's no 200% for auto. It's just auto on or off. So if I go back to off, that's what we had. Now I could try some of the other ones. Level, that kind of levels it, so that would be good for fixing the horizon, but not quite fixing the buildings. Vertical, that's kind of auto, but not good enough. And full, well, full just does something I totally don't need. So let's go back to off. So this is why guided was added, because auto sometimes isn't enough. And this is where we get in to what guided is. So if we go to guided gives me the ability to draw guides. In other words, for me, to tell Lightroom what should be straight. That way, Lightroom doesn't have to guess. Camera Raw doesn't have to guess. I'm drawing out guides. Now, you can draw out more than one guide. As a matter of fact, you have to, because guided works with 2 or more guides. Drawing out one guide will do absolutely nothing. You have to have 2 because it has to know what 2 planes to straighten on. It could be 2 horizontal planes. It could be 2 vertical planes. It could be a vertical and a horizontal, but it needs at least 2. Can it be more than 2? Absolutely. You can do 3. You can do 4. You can do whatever it takes to straighten out your image. So a lot of times I will do 2, definitely just to straighten up the buildings, and I might draw a 3rd horizontal guide to level it as well. So it just depends on what the particular image needs. So here's how I would do it. I would take the guide, and I can barely see the edge of this building, but the edge of this building is probably the straight edge, or the edge that should be straight. So like I said, drawing one guide does absolutely nothing because one guide's not enough. Then I can come over here and I can say, oh, well, there's a little contrast here, and I can see that should be straight. And when I do that, voila, it straightens both edges for me. Now, you can keep going. You can say, hey, I want to draw out another guide, maybe along this railing that should be straight. And there's my horizontal, and look, it's starting to shift the perspective and fix things for you. So you can draw out as many guides as you think it takes to fix your image, to get your image looking the way you want it to look. So I saw the compliment from Valder. Thanks. Yes, it is a beautiful scene in Amsterdam, traditional scene on the canals there, and at night, and long exposure, and this is the kind of cool stuff you'll get. Nice smooth water, beautiful lights, beautiful buildings, so forth and so on, but crooked buildings depending on how you shoot them. So that is what a geometry adjustment is all about. Now, we could stop here, and you could export the image out, and your challenge would be done, but then you'd be missing out on some of the other things we've already talked about, because that's just getting started. That's just getting the image to look proper, to make it look like the buildings aren't squished or whatever. Yes, so much easier than perspective warp. I agree. So now we can go in and take a look at some of the other things, like, switch, since I'm working with, in this case, a raw file. You might be working with JPEG, but I can go ahead and apply a profile to it. If you don't have a profile, don't worry. The next thing I can do is say, you know what? I would love to see what auto tone does to the image. Oh, okay, that's starting to make the image a little bit brighter, maybe too bright. So I can come down and start toning down some of the highlights, come over to the blacks and start increasing some of that shadow detail. I can experiment with the exposure and maybe bring it back down just a hair, because auto is a little bit too much on this image. And then, because this is a nice architectural image, I can start working with texture and clarity, so I can add a lot more texture to the buildings. It's like almost like a sharpening tool. That's 0 texture. That's like dragging up some texture a little bit more, and clarity will also this image will benefit from. Vibrance will kind of adjust the blues in the sky and the water, so that kind of makes it look cool there. And we can even apply a little saturation, just a little, so we're just dragging these sliders over just a little bit to make a big difference. All right, so again, that's before, that's after. So I'm hitting the / key in Lightroom Classic to show you that before and after. So just with a few sliders, dragging out a few guides, we went from this, which now looks totally dull, totally like wave off perspective, to, wow, that looks like a scene I would want to print and hang up. All right, and again, the guides are there as long as you have guided selected, so you can always go in and readjust if you think, hey, now, I want to play with that perspective a little bit more, or maybe move it back that way a little bit more. You can always play with those guides to get that perspective looking just the way you want it to look. I want to straighten that up to about right there. All right. Yeah, this is super cool. Valentine, I love being able to do this. Can you pull out guides in Lightroom without being in Transform? Like you can in Photoshop. Okay, so the question is, can I pull out what you're referring to, LaDonna, is ruler guides? And no, there are no ruler guides in Lightroom. There are guides basically that appear when you're in a function that needs them, such as cropping and such as what I'm in now with transform. Now, once you're done with the transform tool, you can put the transform tool back on the panel, and that will make your guides disappear, even though they're still there. Whenever you reactivate that tool, then the guides are there for you to continue to readjust or add more to. So that is a guided upright, a geometry adjustment that allows us to fix the perspective of images. So once again, if I were to go to this image, same thing. I could go to auto. Auto's not bad. I could live with auto, but knowing that I could do better with guided, I'm going to do guided. So once again, that line should be straight. Nothing happens because it needs at least 2. And that line should be straight. Now, when you get into a situation like this, where it also affects the way the image would, like you're going to have white space left over, then you have 2 choices. You can obviously crop it, so you crop off that white space, or you want to keep the same size of the image, you have a scale slider here. So I can just scale it up to fill that part of the image in. So that's just another use of the guided upright to give you that perspective that you want, and if you need to, you can scale the image accordingly. All right, so I'm going to reset that because we're going to use that image for another day, but just so you know, those are some of the things you can do. Now, also with auto, it did not, since it didn't adjust it as much, I didn't have to crop it. So that may be a trade-off. Like if I need that stuff at the bottom, then I might just have to live with auto so that it doesn't crop off too much from the bottom. Alrighty. Next up, let's talk about exporting. Now we've been talking about this all along. So you have the ability to export your images whenever you want from Lightroom. So this would be just going up to the file menu. We made a preset on day 1. My preset is called export for the daily creative challenge, and that will export the image out and put it in my folder so that I can upload it to Behance or Discord. If you were joining us for the first time, just go to File, Export, and put it wherever you want. So this is just the location. You don't have to rename it. You're not dealing with video. You're gonna make it JPEG, sRGB, quality, at least 1080 on the longest edge. Again, you may need to make it bigger depending on what you're uploading it to. Some have a minimum size requirement. And what else? And then show it in the Finder or the operating system so I can see it when it's finished exporting. Same thing for Lightroom. If this was the finished image, we would just go to Share and export it out using whatever sizing you want it, at least 1080 or bigger. And of course, if we were doing this in Photoshop, let's just do our guided in Photoshop. Guided, there we go. We were doing this in Photoshop. Drawing out the same guides in Photoshop, Camera Raw, or the Camera Raw filter. And once it's done, then I click OK, and that would give me, then I would have the ability to, looks like that one's still crooked. But anyway, it gives me the ability to, wait, did that do what I think it did? Hang on, let's go back. Filter, Camera Raw filter. And transform, guided, here we go. Just make sure I'm doing this on the right edge. There we go. There we go. And there we go. Okay, that looks better. Click OK. That gives me my image, and then I can go into my file menu and export as a quick JPEG, or simply do a export save for web, and you get your save for web dialog box to do your export that way. Making it whatever size you want it to be, JPEG, high quality, and then save it to wherever you want it to save it, and then upload it. All right, so geometry is something you should use whenever you're shooting buildings for sure. And it works on other scenes as well. So if the perspective looks like it's off, there's nothing wrong with trying a guided geometry. Now, if it's not a building, if it doesn't have straight edges, then chances are auto may not do anything for you. So if you're doing it on some other landscape with trees or rocks or something like that, I did this one where there was a Jeep parked up on a cliff, and the perspective looked off, and auto does nothing because it didn't see anything to straighten. But that way, I just went in to guide it and straightened it the way I wanted. Original was a JPEG. Yep, I didn't give you guys any raw files. I see some questions there. Hang on. Dun, 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 dun. I know this series. Yes, there's a difference, Alberto. Classic is the one that's over 10 years. The question was about Classic versus regular Lightroom Cloud. The biggest difference is Lightroom Classic, you're managing your photos. Lightroom Cloud, you're syncing your photos and they're being backed up by Adobe. The other big difference is Lightroom Classic has over a decade worth of features that aren't in the new version yet. So there's lots of differences, but those are the main ones for now. I use Classic because of the feature set that it has and has had for years. All right. So Ken's asking, does Lightroom always convert, and when you go to Photoshop to round trip it, does it always make a TIFF? It makes a TIFF by default if it's a RAW file. If it's a JPEG or a TIFF or something else, it keeps it as to whatever it is. So RAW files by default are JPEGs. I switch my default to TIFFs. I switch my default from TIFF to PSD. Either will work fine. Either works with layers, but I just prefer the PSD format. And that is a preference you can change. Oh, you haven't worked with Lightroom that much, Robin, but you think you're falling in love. Yep, it's hard not to fall in love with Lightroom. I use it every single day. Alrighty, I think I got all the questions. We did our exporting. Now I'm going to go look at some of your work before we call it a day. So first, let's head over to Discord. This is where we left off yesterday, and I did this on purpose to see some of the newer images. So this was using the crop challenge. Great. Before and afters are always great to see the side-by-sides. More crop examples. Cool. A different perspective, meaning cropping it and rotating it. I love that. And plane's kind of a little faded out there. Again, another crop and recomposing adjustment. Love that. This looks like from a different challenge, but cool anyway. Different challenge. All right, scroll down. These are all good. All right, this looks like a little bit more of a compositing challenge. Great. Now, this is what I was talking about as far as I love the final work done on this image, but what's throwing me, and I know a lot of people sometimes do this on purpose, is this crooked horizon. This image is tilted. Now that could be, that could be what you wanted. But you wanted to have the image to have that tilted look. But that water and that horizon being crooked like that, my eye just keeps going to it and saying, no, fix that, fix that. But again, it's your image, you do what you want. But if it were me, I would fix that and make it straight. Unless that's what you intended. All right, cool, cool, cool. Another compositing example, great, great. Again, some of these might be from last week's challenge. Another cropping example, awesome. All right, ooh, another compositing example. Look at the detail that came out from those rocks. Cool. Another crop and edit example, awesome. Another crop and edit example. All right, just changing the perspective all the way around. Another crop example. So yesterday was crop tool lessons. Went over well, I see. People took it to heart and did a lot of recomposing. Love it. Drawing attention to the subject. Good, 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 good. And again, just look at the difference here. All that distraction at the bottom, cropping, adding a little dual tone effect. And we have another jet taking off. Okay, cool. All right, Alan's typing, but Alan, we're not going to wait for you. And I'm going to head over to the browser. And in the browser, again, you want to upload your images if you're doing it to Behance with the hashtag PS Daily Challenge. And I see the one image so far that has that hashtag using yesterday's crop. And I've added those images. I'm adding all my favorites to my mood board for the Photography Daily Challenge. So cool images you guys have been working on for this challenge and the one before it. Alrighty, we are just about out. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Tomorrow we'll have a different challenge, different images, different things to do. And what I'd love for you to go do now is you can either work with my image on the geometry. I'm sure you shot buildings yourself, photograph buildings. Let's see some of your buildings that you fixed the geometry on. Once you see bad geometry, you can't ignore it anymore. So let's see your fixed geometry and your fixed horizons. Let's show you straighten those images out, and let's see you change the perspective to make it look more natural, more normal as the buildings would normally look to the naked eye. Because yeah, when you look at them with your naked eye, they're not leaning over, but they just look that way when your camera lens converts them over. All right, with that said, stay tuned. We have Caleb coming up next to do some more photo compositing. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, everybody.